When Donovan Pierce's private jet touched down outside Denver, he expected his mother, Evelyn, to be waiting in the elegant white house he'd paid to maintain for years. Instead, the house was empty. The locks had been changed, and her bedroom, once a sanctuary of lavender and lace, had been turned into a storage unit. By sunset, he found Evelyn Pierce beneath an abandoned property, behind a rusted hatch hidden under a tangle of weeds. She didn't smile. She backed away, her voice a trembling whisper. "You should never have come home." Before that night, Donovan believed money had kept his family safe. For nearly 7 years, he'd lived a life of high-stakes military contracts, aerospace facilities, and private airfields overseas. His name appeared in business magazines. His company built navigation systems for defense aircraft. Men in expensive suits shook his hand and called him brilliant. But whenever anyone asked about home, Donovan always gave the same reassuring answer: "My mother is taken care of." He believed it because he wanted to. Every month, he sent money to Colorado. Money for the mortgage, for repairs, for groceries, doctors, heat, and whatever else Evelyn might need. His half-brother Grant handled everything. Grant lived close by. Grant gave updates. Grant sent short messages that sounded responsible enough. "Mom is fine, the house is fine, don't worry about things here." So, Donovan didn't worry. Not enough. That afternoon, as his private jet rolled to a stop at a small executive airport outside Denver, Donovan stepped down the stairs with a rare smile on his face. He carried no entourage, no cameras, no announcement. Just a black coat, a leather overnight bag, and a small velvet box containing the pearl earrings Evelyn had once admired in a shop window but refused to let him buy. He had imagined her opening the door. He had imagined her hands flying to her mouth. He had imagined saying, "I'm home, Mom," and watching years of distance disappear in one embrace. The drive into the old neighborhood felt familiar at first. The mountains were still there, blue and distant. The streets still bent the same way. Even the white house at the corner of Hawthorne Lane still stood beneath the same cottonwood tree. But when Donovan's SUV stopped in front of his mother's house, the smile left his face. A new pickup truck sat in the driveway. The front porch had been repainted a color Evelyn would have hated, and the brass wind chime she used to keep beside the door was gone. Donovan got out slowly. He checked the address, though he already knew it by heart. Then, he walked up the steps and tried his key. It didn't fit. Before he could knock, the door opened. Grant Pierce stood there in a linen shirt, holding a glass of iced tea like he owned the afternoon. He was younger than Donovan, softer around the face, with the kind of smile that arrived before the truth did. "Donovan," Grant said, a hint of surprise in his voice. "You should have called." Donovan looked past him into the house. "Where's Mom?" Grant's smile tightened. Inside, a woman's voice called from the kitchen. Grant's wife, Melissa, appeared a second later, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked surprised, but not guilty. That almost made it worse. "Donovan," she said, "we didn't know you were coming. I asked where my mother is." Grant stepped onto the porch and pulled the door halfway closed behind him. "She's not here," he said carefully. Donovan stared at him. "What do you mean she's not here?" Grant lowered his voice as if protecting a family embarrassment. "She left a few months ago. She got difficult, paranoid. She kept accusing people of watching her. She said the house didn't belong to her anymore. We tried everything." Donovan felt something cold move through his chest. "You let our mother leave." Grant's face hardened. "She chose to leave." Donovan pushed past him into the house. The living room looked staged. New couch, new rug, new framed prints on the wall. Nothing of Evelyn's remained, except the old piano in the corner, covered now with unopened delivery boxes. He walked down the hall to her bedroom. The door was open. Inside, there was no bed, no quilt, no framed photo of Arthur Pierce on the dresser, no lavender lotion on the nightstand. Just plastic storage bins, folded holiday decorations, and Melissa's extra clothes hanging where Evelyn's dresses used to be. Donovan stood there without moving. For a moment, all his money, all his power, all his success meant nothing. He turned back slowly. Grant was watching him from the hallway. "You said she was fine." "She was," Grant replied, "until she wasn't." Donovan opened the nearest storage bin. On top lay Evelyn's winter coat. the brown one she had worn for years. Beneath it were envelopes, medical bills, final notices, prescription receipts marked unpaid. His hand tightened. Then he saw something else. A thin county folder folded in half and tucked beneath the coat. He pulled it free. Inside was a receipt. County auction purchase, abandoned parcel outside Morrison Ridge, sale price $5. Buyer Evelyn Pierce. Donovan looked up. Grant's face changed, just a little. Enough. Within an hour, Donovan was driving alone toward the address printed on the receipt. The road thinned into cracked pavement, then gravel. The land opened wide and empty. Old fencing leaned into weeds. A faded sign warned against trespassing, though no one seemed to care enough to enforce it. At first, Donovan saw nothing. Then the headlights caught a strip of rusted metal half buried beneath wild grass. He stopped the SUV. The evening air was cold when he stepped out. He walked slowly toward the metal shape, his dress shoes sinking into damp soil. His pulse grew louder with every step. It was a hatch, heavy, steel, hidden badly, as if someone had used it recently but lacked the strength to cover it all the way. Donovan grabbed the handle and pulled. The hatch groaned open. A stairway descended into darkness. He stood there, breathing hard. Then from below a voice trembled. Donovan? His heart broke before he saw her. Evelyn Pierce stood at the bottom of the stairs in an old gray sweater, thinner than he remembered, one hand gripping the wall. Her eyes were wet, but not with joy, with fear. "Mom," he whispered. He started down the steps. She backed away. "No," she said. "You shouldn't be here." Donovan froze halfway down. "Who did this to you?" Evelyn shook her head, trembling. "Don't trust Grant," she whispered. "And whatever you do, don't let Victor Langley know you found me." Donovan stared at her. That name had not been spoken in their family for 20 years. Then Evelyn looked past him toward the open hatch and said the words that turned his blood cold. "This place is the only reason your father died with a clean name." The words settled between them, heavy and cold. The underground space felt colder suddenly, not because of the temperature, but because Evelyn had never spoken about Arthur Pierce that way. Arthur had been dead for almost 2 decades. In all that time, Donovan had never heard a single rumor, accusation, or scandal attached to his name. Arthur had been a respected architect, a man of integrity. To hear his mother suggest his clean name was conditional, protected by this hidden place, was a shock. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Donovan asked, his voice low. Evelyn gestured vaguely around the small, meticulously organized space. It was a home, not a bunker. A small library, a kitchen, a bedroom, all carved out of the earth. "Arthur built this," she said, "for Naomi Reed." Naomi Reed, another name from the past, whispered only in hushed tones, always associated with a vague sense of tragedy. Naomi had been a close friend of Evelyn's, a brilliant, vibrant woman who had disappeared suddenly years ago. "Naomi Reed?" Donovan pressed. "What does she have to do with this? What does she have to do with Dad?" Evelyn's eyes darted around the room, as if unseen listeners might be lurking in the shadows. Naomi was pregnant, she finally confessed, with Arthur's child. The revelation hit Donovan like a physical blow. His father, the man of integrity, had had an affair, a child out of wedlock. The carefully constructed image of his family shattered. "And Victor Langley?" he asked, remembering Evelyn's earlier warning. "What does he have to do with it?" Evelyn's face tightened. Victor was Naomi's husband. He didn't know about the child. Arthur built this place to hide Naomi, to protect her, and to protect his reputation. Donovan's mind reeled. This wasn't just about his father's affair. It was about a hidden life, a secret family, and a network of lies that stretched back decades. He spent the next few hours listening to Evelyn, piecing together the fragments of a story she had kept buried for so long. Arthur had built the underground home shortly after Naomi discovered she was pregnant. He had moved her there, away from Victor, away from prying eyes. But then, tragedy struck. Naomi died during childbirth. The baby, a girl, was adopted through a private arrangement. Arthur, consumed by guilt and fear of exposure, had entrusted the secret to Evelyn, making her promise to protect it, and to protect the child's identity. "But why are you living here now, Mom?" Donovan asked, the question burning in his mind. Evelyn's gaze hardened. Because Victor Langley found out. Not about the child, not directly, but about Naomi's connection to Arthur. He started digging. He started asking questions. He started making threats. She explained that Victor, a powerful and ruthless businessman, had always been obsessed with his family's image. The idea of his deceased wife having an affair, especially with a prominent figure like Arthur Pierce, would have been devastating to his carefully constructed world. He wanted to bury the truth, Evelyn said. He wanted to erase Naomi's existence from anything connected to Arthur. Donovan felt a surge of anger. Victor Langley, a name synonymous with corporate power and influence, was now connected to his family's deepest secret. He remembered the missing records, the altered documents Rachel had mentioned. It all clicked into place. Victor wasn't just cleaning up a scandal, he was systematically erasing history. Evelyn then led him to a small, hidden compartment behind a loose brick in the library. Inside, she pulled out a worn, leather-bound journal. "Arthur's," she whispered. "He wrote everything in here." Donovan opened it carefully. The pages were filled with his father's elegant handwriting, detailing his affair with Naomi, his guilt, his plans for the underground home, and his desperate attempts to protect her and their child. There were also letters, unsent, addressed to Naomi, full of love and regret. And then, a photograph, a faded image of Naomi Reed, vibrant and smiling, standing next to a man Donovan didn't recognize. Something about the stranger felt impossible to ignore. "Who is this?" he asked quietly. Evelyn swallowed. "I don't know his name." Donovan looked at her. "Then why keep the photograph?" Her voice trembled. "Because Arthur wrote something on the back." Slowly, Donovan turned the picture over. His heart stopped. Written in Arthur Pierce's unmistakable handwriting were 8 words. "The man beside Naomi must never find Donovan." The words on the back of the photograph seemed to pull all the air from the room. "The man beside Naomi must never find Donovan." Donovan read them again. Then a third time. Arthur Pierce had never been dramatic. He never wrote warnings unless he believed them, which meant this message had mattered. A lot. "Who is he?" Donovan asked. Evelyn shook her head. "I told you, I don't know his name." "Then how did Arthur know him?" Her silence answered before she did. "He never told me everything." Donovan looked down at the photograph. The stranger appeared to be in his late 40s or early 50s when the picture was taken. His arm rested loosely behind Naomi. Not intimate, familiar. There was something unsettling about his face, not because Donovan recognized him, but because part of him felt like he should. "Where did you find this?" "In the cabinet." "Recently?" Evelyn nodded. "I found it the same day I found the adoption file." Donovan carefully slipped the photograph back into its protective sleeve. Nothing about this felt accidental. The file, the letters, the hidden property, the warning. Each piece connected somehow. He just couldn't see the full picture yet. His phone vibrated. "Rachel." He stepped away from Evelyn before answering. "I was about to call you," he said. "Good," Rachel replied. "Because I found something." Her tone immediately caught his attention. "What happened?" "I spent the morning tracking historical land records connected to Naomi Reed." Donovan leaned against the wall. "And Naomi's name disappears." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means she owned things." Then suddenly she didn't. "People sell property all the time. Not like this." Rachel's voice sharpened. "There are gaps, entire filings missing, ownership transfers with incomplete signatures, survey maps that don't match later versions." Donovan's stomach tightened. "You think someone altered them?" "I think someone spent years cleaning up paperwork." The answer sounded disturbingly familiar. Just like the missing adoption records, just like the deleted emails, just like the pages removed from the file. Someone wasn't hiding one secret. Someone was hiding an entire history. "Can you prove it?" "Not yet." Not yet. Those 2 words had become the story of his life. Not enough evidence, not enough answers, not enough truth. Rachel continued. "There is one thing you should know. Victor Langley's father appears repeatedly near these records." Donovan closed his eyes. Of course he did. Every road kept leading back to the same family. "Keep digging," he said. "I will." The call ended. When he returned to the library room, Evelyn was staring at the old letters again. Her fingers rested gently on one envelope, almost like she was afraid to disturb it. "Mom!" She looked up. Did Arthur know Victor Langley's father? A shadow crossed her face. Yes. The answer came immediately. Too immediately. How well? Well enough to regret it. Donovan sat down. For several moments neither spoke. Then Evelyn took a deep breath. Arthur trusted the wrong people. That cost him, yes. What exactly? Her eyes moved toward the photograph, toward Naomi, toward the stranger, toward decades of silence. His reputation, she whispered. The answer sent a chill through him, because it connected directly to what she had said on the first night. This place is the only reason your father died with a clean name. Somehow the underground house had protected Arthur from a scandal, or a lie, or both. Before Donovan could ask another question, a sharp electronic beep echoed through the corridor. Both of them froze. The sound came again. Beep, beep, beep. Not old technology. Something modern. Donovan immediately stood. What was that? Evelyn looked alarmed. I've never heard it before. He moved quickly through the hallway toward the maintenance section where he had found the newer wiring. The sound grew louder. A small monitor mounted inside the locked compartment suddenly flickered to life. Static filled the screen. Then an image appeared. The hatch. The entrance above ground. Live footage. Donovan's pulse jumped. Someone had reactivated the system remotely. The image shook slightly, then stabilized. A black SUV rolled into view. His blood ran cold. Another vehicle followed behind it. Two men stepped out. Both wore business suits. One of them pointed toward the hatch. The other spoke into a phone. "Mom," Donovan called. Evelyn hurried into the room. The moment she saw the screen, her face went pale. They found it. Donovan grabbed his phone. Still no signal underground. He cursed under his breath. The men above continued moving around the property, searching, examining, waiting. Then a third vehicle arrived. This one looked familiar. Too familiar. Donovan leaned closer to the monitor. For a second, he thought he was mistaken. Then the driver stepped out. Grant. The room went silent. Evelyn closed her eyes. No. The word barely escaped her lips. Grant walked toward the two businessmen. They shook hands. One of the men handed him a folder. The gesture was casual, comfortable, practiced. There was no confusion about what Donovan was seeing. Grant wasn't being pressured. He wasn't being manipulated in that moment. He was participating. The realization hit harder than any financial record, harder than the stolen money, harder than the decades of lies. Grant, his own brother, had betrayed them. He had led Victor Langley's men to their mother's hidden sanctuary. Donovan knew then that the fight wasn't just about his father's past, or Naomi Reed's forgotten story. It was about protecting his mother and reclaiming the truth from those who sought to bury it. He had to act, and he had to act fast. He moved quickly, pulling Evelyn into the small, reinforced panic room Arthur had built into the underground structure. "Stay here," he instructed, his voice firm. "No matter what you hear, don't come out." He then grabbed a small, heavy wrench from a toolbox. It wasn't a weapon, but it was something. He returned to the monitor. The men were now at the hatch, trying to force it open. The sound of metal groaning echoed through the underground space. Donovan knew he couldn't fight them all, but he could buy time. He could make them work for it. He found the controls for the ventilation system, a complex network Arthur had designed. With a few quick adjustments, he reversed the airflow, sending a cloud of dust and debris up through the hatch. The men coughed and stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. That gave him a precious few minutes. He frantically searched for a way to disable the remote access to the monitoring system. He found a small, unlabeled switch and flipped it. The screen went black. He had cut off their eyes, at least for now. But he knew it wouldn't last. They would find a way in. He had to get help. He had to expose Victor Langley and Grant. He found a hidden satellite phone, another of Arthur's contingency plans, and quickly dialed Rachel. The signal was weak, but it connected. "Rachel," he said, his voice urgent. "They're here. Victor Langley's men. And Grant. They found Mom." He quickly explained the situation. The underground home, Naomi Reed, the journal, and the photograph. Rachel, ever the professional, remained calm. "I'm calling the authorities," she said. "And I'm contacting a journalist I trust. We're going to blow this wide open." Donovan heard the sounds of heavy tools above. the distinct clang of metal against metal. They were breaking through. He knew he couldn't stay. He had to create a diversion. Draw them away from Evelyn. He found a back exit, a narrow tunnel leading to a discreet opening in a dense thicket of trees several hundred yards away. Before he left, he grabbed the journal and the photograph, the evidence that would expose everything. He emerged into the cold night air, the sounds of the men above still echoing faintly. He moved silently through the undergrowth, circling around the property, trying to get a clearer view. He saw Grant, talking animatedly with Victor Langley's enforcers. The betrayal was a bitter pill to swallow. Suddenly, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across his position. He dropped to the ground, heart pounding. They had seen him. The chase was on. Donovan, despite his wealth and success, was not a fighter, but he was resourceful. He used his knowledge of the terrain, the abandoned property, to his advantage, leading them on a winding pursuit through the overgrown fields and crumbling structures. He knew he couldn't outrun them forever, but he could delay them. He could buy Rachel and the authorities time. Just as he felt his strength waning, just as the footsteps grew closer, he heard the distant wail of sirens. Relief washed over him, quickly followed by a renewed surge of adrenaline. The authorities were here. Rachel had delivered. The men pursuing him froze, then scattered, disappearing into the night. Grant, however, was caught. He stood there, illuminated by the flashing lights of the police cruisers, his face a mask of shock and fear. The next few days were a blur of police interviews, legal consultations, and media frenzy. The story of the underground home, Naomi Reed, Arthur Pierce, and Victor Langley's decades-long cover-up exploded across the news. The journal and the photograph were irrefutable evidence. The altered land records, thanks to Rachel's tireless work, provided further proof of Victor's manipulation. Victor Langley, a man who had built an empire on secrecy and control, found his world crumbling. The public outcry was immense. His carefully cultivated image shattered. Grant, facing charges of conspiracy and aiding and abetting, was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He confessed to everything, admitting he had been paid by Victor to keep Evelyn isolated and to report her movements, and ultimately to lead Victor to the underground home. The money, he claimed, had been for his family, for a better life, but the price he paid was far greater. The legal battle that followed was protracted and complex. Victor Langley's legal team fought fiercely, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge ruled in favor of Evelyn Pierce, recognizing her legal ownership of the underground property and validating the historical records of Naomi Reed. The investigators reviewed the altered records. The trust remained protected. The property remained protected. And for the first time in decades, Naomi Reed's name entered the official record again. Victor remained silent when the ruling was read, but the loss showed not in anger, but in absence. The certainty was gone. His family's control over the story had finally ended. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Victor left through a side entrance. Grant stayed. That choice mattered more than anyone realized. A month later, the legal process continued. Investigations moved slowly. Documents were reviewed, ownership questions remained under examination. But some things had already changed. The county approved safety upgrades for the underground residents. Electrical systems were inspected. Emergency exits were added. Structural reviews were completed. Evelyn regained legal occupancy, not because someone pitied her, but because the property met the requirements, because it was hers. The first night she returned officially, Donovan walked beside her through the underground home. The rooms felt different now, not hidden, but recognized. The letters remained on the shelves. The photographs remained on the walls. Naomi Reed's story remained unfinished, but it no longer belonged to people trying to erase it. It belonged to the truth. A few weeks later, Donovan finalized the documents. The new trust carried a different name, Naomi Reed Legacy Trust. Rachel reviewed every page before he signed. The purpose was simple: protect the property, preserve the historical record, and ensure that no future developer could quietly bury the past again. The underground home remained a private residence, but over time, several older adults displaced by housing issues found temporary shelter there. Not charity, not a facility, but a place of dignity. a place where nobody had to beg for permission to stay. Evelyn insisted on that. "It isn't about saving people," she told Donovan one evening. "It's about letting them keep their pride." He understood exactly what she meant, because she had nearly lost hers. Grant faced consequences: financial restitution, settlement agreements, public embarrassment. The investigation forced uncomfortable truths into daylight. Some neighbors stopped speaking to him. Others never trusted him again. The damage was real and deserved, but he accepted it. That was new. Every week he came to help with repairs. Every week he worked without asking for praise, without asking for forgiveness. Evelyn noticed. She never pretended everything was fixed. Some wounds remained. Some always would. But one afternoon, as Grant finished installing shelves in a storage room, she handed him a cup of coffee. Nothing more. No speech, no dramatic reconciliation. Just a small act. A beginning. Grant nearly cried anyway. Months passed. The investigation into historical record tampering continued. Victor Langley resigned from several leadership positions while reviews remained ongoing. No handcuffs. No theatrical downfall. Just the gradual loss of control. Sometimes consequences arrived quietly. One autumn evening, Donovan stood outside the rusted hatch where everything had started. The weeds had been cleared. The entrance remained simple, almost invisible. Anyone driving past would still miss it. He smiled at that. The most valuable thing he had found was never the land, never the trust, never the money. It was the truth. And the mother he almost lost while believing wire transfers were the same thing as love. Behind him, Evelyn emerged from the underground home, carrying a small box. She looked stronger than she had months earlier. Not younger, not healed completely, but steady, at peace. "Thinking about leaving?" she asked. Donovan looked at her, then at the sunset spreading across the field. "I postponed 3 contracts." Evelyn laughed softly. "That wasn't my question." "No," he smiled. It wasn't. For years he had crossed oceans for work, built companies, signed deals, chased success, and somehow convinced himself he was taking care of his family from a distance. Now he finally understood what had been missing: presence. He took the box from her hands. Together they walked back toward the hatch, slowly, without hurry, without fear. For the first time since buying the forgotten property, Evelyn no longer looked like a woman hiding underground. She looked like a woman coming home. And beneath the earth, in the place no one wanted, dignity had finally found an address.